Did you watch it? Watch what? The film? The film? Oh, aye. What'd you think? Good, isn't it? No, not really. I didn't like it. No, I thought it was crap. Oh, right. Alright, I thought you'd like it. I thought it'd be up your street.
One of my pet peeves is when people describe a piece of media as either mid or peak.
It's crap. Yours crap.
It's a way for loud idiots to seem like they have an opinion when they're incapable of formulating an original thought.
Just have a thought. Have an original thought.
Peak and mid are just fancy Gen Alpha TikTok synonyms of good and bad, or as Rotten Tomatoes puts it, fresh and rotten. Every film is labeled with a happy ripe red tomato or an angry rotten green tomato to indicate whether it's a good movie or a bad movie. It can only ever be one or the other. And that's my real gripe with the peak mid people. It flattens all the nuance. Film Talk and Rotten Tomatoes will confidently declare anything they come across to be a peak/fresh good movie or a rotten/mid bad movie. But the truth is, there's a vast middle ground between good and bad. Most movies exist in a grey area between peak masterpiece and mid piece of shit. And that's the point of film criticism, analysing what works and what doesn't, and figuring out why it does or doesn't work.
So these are just all labels. You just label everything. That's so fucking lazy. You're a lazy fucker.
When people say something like, there are no good movies getting made anymore, or every movie these days is mid, or all modern movies are slop, they're talking about the big budget, heavily marketed tentpole studio movies that the average filmgoer will actually hear about. Not little indie darlings like Sorry Baby or Hundreds of Beavers, or even low budget breakouts like Obsession and Backrooms and Everything Everywhere All at Once. I hate when people call a movie mid because it feels so reductive to a piece of work that a huge team of artists spent months or years working on. To just dismiss it offhand with one word, it's not even a real word. But when I watch a lot of big budget blockbusters lately, I have to admit I get it. I get why a kid growing up today going out to the cinema and watching forgettable fluff like a Minecraft movie and a Mario movie and a Mandalorian movie might think every movie getting churned out by Hollywood is, quote, mid.
Everything's not awesome. Everything's not cool. I am so depressed.
Everything's not awesome.
The current studio system, the one satirized so perfectly by Seth Rogen in The Studio, is fundamentally broken. They're doing a terrible job of adapting to the post-Netflix, post-COVID world. Ryan Gosling made headlines recently when he told a Project Hail Mary audience it's not their job to keep movie theaters in business. It's his job and Hollywood's job to make movies that are good enough to warrant the trip to the cinema and the expense of the ticket. Project Hail Mary is exactly that, a cinematic spectacle / emotional rollercoaster worth the price of admission and then some. But it's a diamond in the rough. A lot of big budget movies coming out of the current studio system are just mid. It's the way they're made. They're greenlit by a bunch of unqualified suits completely out of touch with their own audience, and then dragged kicking and screaming into the can through a nightmarish process of rewrites and reshoots. If these big studio films end up being cohesive at all, it's a miracle. Studios throw massive budgets at directors, start meddling way too late in the process, and end up $300 million in the hole on a movie that fundamentally doesn't work. The famously troubled Captain America Brave New World being a prime example.
Since when were they red?
You can keep throwing money at it, keep doubling down on it, but the best case scenario is a forgettable 3 out of 5 movie, and the worst case scenario is incoherent drivel throwing good money after bad. 9 times out of 10, it's going to be an absolute mess. And even that 1 out of 10 still isn't a particularly good movie. It's just fine. The mentality now is more.
How do you like it? How do you like it?
Avatar Part 2 became too big, so James Cameron split it into 2 films, and then Avatar Part 3 got pushed back, and 5 films became 7 films. The instinct is to drag it out, not winnow it back down. If the story is too big to fit into 1 film, that means it's too complicated and there's a lot of subplots that don't need to be there. But the current model is all about quantity over quality. Instead of simplifying Avatar 2, stretch it out into Avatar 3 and basically just tell the same story twice, and turn $2 billion into $3 billion. The Mandalorian and Grogu's story got the perfect ending in The Mandalorian Season 2 finale. The climactic action and the tearful farewell and the purposeful shift of the status quo all made that episode feel like a satisfying conclusion to that story for those characters. But Disney weren't nearly done cashing in on the Baby Yoda phenomenon, so they hastily reunited Mando and Grogu in a spin-off that hardly anyone watched, and they haven't even tried to change the status quo since then. After having turned Moana's streaming spin-off into a forgettable but financially lucrative movie sequel, the Mouse House decided to do it again and had Jon Favreau cram The Mandalorian Season 4 into a feature-length movie for theaters. And the movie turned out exactly as you'd expect. It feels like watching 4 episodes of the show back to back, and it's so safe and by the numbers and episodic that you could skip the movie completely and not miss anything important. There was no real reason for the movie to exist other than Disney having a tentpole to release in that quarter. And that's one of the biggest problems. They're more interested in exploiting the IP than finding a story worth telling. They're more interested in what looks good on a balance sheet than what looks good on a cinema screen. Disney will just keep milking that cash cow until its teats are all chapped and dried up, and apparently they won't even stop when the franchise is no longer profitable because The Mandalorian and Grogu got laughed out of the box office by an indie horror film. The numbers tell a very clear story. Project Hail Mary and Obsession made a combined $1 billion with their exciting original stories, and The Mandalorian and Grogu struggled to break even with the reheated leftovers of a 7-year-old TV show. Star Wars is a really interesting case study for this stuff, especially under Disney. Rogue One and Solo are both pretty good movies, all things considered, but they both had a nightmare production where they were taken away from their original directors, the new directors did extensive reshoots, and the fact that they're even watchable, and in the case of Rogue One, much better than watchable, is nothing short of miraculous. Rogue One ended up in the hands of Tony Gilroy, who salvaged it by basically turning it into a series finale for Andor before he'd made Andor. And Solo was taken away from Project Hail Mary directors Phil Lord and Chris Miller because they were making it too fun, and Lucasfilm didn't want their audience to have too much fun. So the final product is half a really fun movie and half the dreary, self-serious slog that Ron Howard and the studio executives tried to replace it with.
What's your name, son?
Hunt.
What? Who are your people?
I don't have people. I'm alone.
Solo?
No.
James Gunn's words have been coming back to haunt him recently. All his praise for the Supergirl script and his commitment to avoid superhero fatigue by not making mediocre movies is all hilarious in hindsight now that Supergirl has turned out to be a very mediocre movie, whose soulless script is its biggest problem. When Gunn took over DC Studios, one of his first official decrees was that he would never greenlight a movie or TV show for production until he had a good enough script. Those words have been used against him now that we've seen how bad the Supergirl script he greenlit really was, after he'd loved it so much that he fast-tracked it as the second ever DCU movie after his own Superman flick. But whether Gunn is actually a good judge of what constitutes a screenplay ready for production, that policy is at least a step in the right direction. As a cog in the Marvel machine, Gunn had seen plenty of disasters grow out of the process of sinking hundreds of millions of dollars into a movie that hasn't even been figured out on the page yet. Gunn's policy of only greenlighting projects that have a finished script should be the standard, not the odd one out. Some of the greatest films ever made started shooting without a complete script. Jaws, Casablanca, Lawrence of Arabia, Apocalypse Now. But more often than not, you end up with something like Alien 3, or Jurassic Park 3, or Pirates of the Caribbean 3.
Well, at least we can all agree the third one's always the worst.
Gunn's model seemed to be foolproof when he first laid it out. I remember thinking, why isn't everyone doing it like that? But apparently even that system can produce a quote-unquote mid-movie on just the second try. Maybe the problem is just that it's so hard to make a good movie, it's so hard for all those pieces to come together, and for the unifying vision to actually work and actually come through in the execution, especially at that massive blockbuster scale, that you can only really expect 1 out of 10 to be any good. We've seen time and time again that you can have all the ingredients for a great movie, whether it's solid source material or an all-star cast or a director with a proven track record in a certain genre, and still fuck it up. But something's gotta give. A system that ensures the product is subpar, a system that requires the consumer to be jaded and apathetic, is no system at all. If audiences will only show up to see movies that cost $300 million, and $300 million movies are really hard to get right, then nobody wins. The studios put all their eggs in one basket, the audience is almost guaranteed a crappy time, and the ticket prices keep going up to accommodate this bullshit.
Enough already.
James Gunn is a studio head with way more experience on the filmmaking side than his peers, but next to no experience on the business side, and we're starting to see the disadvantages of hiring a creative to run a studio. But the opposite is usually the case. Someone like Bob Iger or David Zaslav or David Ellison might have a lot of knowledge and experience on the business side, but they don't understand the creative process. They don't understand artistic passion, or even their own audience's taste. Sometimes studio executives can have good notes that help guide the filmmaker as they realize their vision. There are countless stories of HBO's notes making their shows better. But more often than not, they meddle with a good thing and fuck it all up.
No. He was supposed to have attitude.
What do you mean exactly?
Oh, you know, attitude. Sunglasses!
These studios all have a nasty habit of greenlighting projects that'll make the shareholders happy, and setting release dates that'll make the shareholders happy. We'll have another Hunger Games prequel out in Q3 of 2029. We'll have a Rot of the Hutt solo movie out in time for Christmas 2030. And then they force their filmmakers to meet those release dates no matter what. They just go full steam ahead without any kind of roadmap. This is another area where Star Wars is the perfect case study.
Let the past die. Kill it if you have to.
Lucasfilm raced out the sequel trilogy with no plan for where it would go, and with the mandate that they would have a new movie out every 2 years to dominate the holiday seasons of 2015, 2017, and 2019. George Lucas took 3 years between each movie in the original and prequel trilogies, and that extra year of planning and preparation and brainstorming, all unified by one creator's vision, made all the difference.
I may have gone too far in a few places.
J.J. Abrams set up one trilogy with The Force Awakens in 2015, then Rian Johnson continued a totally different trilogy with The Last Jedi in 2017, and even when it was clear that this trilogy was a total disaster, they threw out their script for episode 9 and started from scratch, they lost their director, and they brought back J.J. to rewrite it and shoot it and edit it all in the space of a few months. They didn't pump the brakes and delay the release date and give the filmmakers at least another few months to figure out how they would wrap up this completely unplanned and unthought through trilogy, as well as wrapping up the entire Star Wars saga as a whole. Even after Solo bombed and it was clear that Star Wars fatigue was setting in, Disney didn't budge from that predetermined release window. They forced Abrams to get something into theaters in time for Christmas 2019. And he certainly did put something into theaters in time for Christmas 2019.
Oh, they fly now!
They fly now? They fly now!
The Rise of Skywalker was a complete unprecedented shit show.
Somehow Palpatine returned.
The first movie of the trilogy had set up the third one for failure with all the mystery box teasers that would never get paid off.
A good question. For another time.
And at the time, Abrams didn't realize he was the schmuck who would have to make all this stuff make sense in the third movie.
Dark science. Cloning. Secrets only the Sith knew.
But Disney got it out in time to please the shareholders with $1 billion worldwide gross. Fans be damned. Sometimes they will delay the release date, but only in a case like Avengers Doomsday, where the entire studio's fate might be riding on it, so they can't possibly afford to fuck it up.
We're going to need a miracle.
Quantum of Solace and Transformers Revenge of the Fallen both had their writing process interrupted by the 2007-2008 writers' strike. Revenge of the Fallen barely had any kind of written blueprint at all. The writers had barely come up with anything by the time the strike began, but Paramount was determined to get its Transformers sequel out in a certain fiscal quarter, and they didn't have time to wait for their writers to negotiate a fairer deal. So right before the strike went into effect, the screenwriters churned out a loose story outline for Michael Bay to work from, and Bay went into production with a $200 million budget to turn that loose collection of half-baked ideas into a fully fledged movie. And guess what? The movie fucking sucked. Revenge of the Fallen is beyond mid. Rise of the Beasts is mid. Revenge of the Fallen is just downright dog shit.
I am directly below the enemy scrotum.
Considering what went into making it, Jurassic World Rebirth is a miracle. It's not a great movie, but after the absolute carnage it faced behind the scenes, it is much better than it has any right to be. In the summer of 2024, Universal got a new Jurassic script from David Koepp and decided it would be their tentpole release in the summer of 2025. Some of the directors they reached out to, like David Leitch, turned down the job because the timeline was just impossible. You couldn't possibly map out a production of that scale, get all the post done to a satisfying level, and get the thing into cinemas all in the space of a year. The fact that Gareth Edwards was able to do that and create so many great set pieces and so many great VFX sequences on such a time crunch is a genuine miracle. But on its own, it's not a particularly great film. When I gave it a positive review last year, it came with the caveat that it's good under the circumstances. And I shouldn't have to include that caveat. I shouldn't have to take a mismanaged company's asinine corporate decisions into account when I critique their films. Jurassic World Rebirth is about as good of a movie as we can get out of this broken modern studio system. And it's fine. It's a fun couple of hours at the movies to turn your brain off and watch Jonathan Bailey duck away from pterodactyls. But it's a piece of shit compared to Steven Spielberg's original Jurassic Park. That was a big budget, crowd-pleasing blockbuster and a really strong, almost flawless piece of filmmaking. They don't have to be mutually exclusive. Why can't they all be like that? I love big blockbusters. I love big, mindless, escapist popcorn movies. I get just as excited by something like Jurassic World Rebirth or a new Marvel movie or a new Star Wars movie as I do when something like Marty Supreme or Sentimental Value comes along. I want every big blockbuster to be great, but the current studio system just isn't working. The economics of the business are outdated, the demands of the audience are being underestimated and misunderstood, all the decisions are being made by ancient executives who still think He-Man is relevant in 2026, and huge sums of money are being spent in hilariously inefficient ways.
The whole world smiles with you.
The wave of aggressively mediocre blockbusters we've seen over the past few years is a result of complacency. The industry hot streak of the mid to late 2010s, when low-effort Marvel movies and Disney remakes were raking in billions hand over fist, allowed the studios to get complacent. The same thing happened in the 60s, when the studios became reliant on formulaic westerns and lavish roadshow musicals. It was the worst possible time for COVID to hit.
Get back, 6 feet, ma'am, 6 fucking feet!
Just when those tried and true formulas stopped printing money, a pesky virus came along to nearly eradicate the entire fucking industry.
It actually kills the COVID germs. In between the shows, we come and wipe down every seed as well.
Before COVID, Thor Ragnarok arrived at the height of the MCU's powers. It's one of the best superhero movies ever made. It delivers the goods, but also subverts the genre, and it was made with genuine passion as a modern-day Big Trouble in Little China. It's really funny and really action-packed, but it's also genuinely moving. But the post-COVID sequel, Thor: Love and Thunder, was not like that.
And flick! Oh, you flicked too hard, damn it!
It doubled down on all the things that work better in small doses in Ragnarok, and left out all the deeper stuff that actually made it a great film. When Marvel brings an indie director like Taika Waititi to the blockbuster level, he gives 110% his first time at the bat. Then he gets sloppy once he's a sought-after commodity.
Does that look real? In that particular shot, no, actually.
Ragnarok is symbolic of Marvel's peak. Building up to Infinity War, every movie was a guaranteed banger. But Love and Thunder is symbolic of Marvel's downfall. It's lazy, it's complacent, and it's basically a parody of itself.
Well, you're right.
The middest of the mid is straight to streaming movies, because there's no incentive for them to be any better than mid. Something like Red Notice or The Gray Man or The Electric State is basically $300 million second screen entertainment. They don't have to be gripping enough to get people to come out to a cinema, buy a ticket, sit through the whole thing and leave excited to tell their friends about this amazing new movie they just watched. Streaming movies just have to do the bare minimum to get people to leave it on in the background while they're filling out expense reports or buttering their toast. As long as they tell their friends, yeah, it was alright, so their friends decide to stick it on in the background while they're buttering toast and filling out expense reports, then Netflix executives are perfectly happy. They'd much rather have a crappy movie that everyone watches and immediately forgets about than a transcendent masterpiece that changes the lives of 100 people. The streamers don't even care if you finish their movies, they just want as many minutes watched as possible. Netflix would rather have 10 million people watch 15 minutes of Murder Mystery 2 than have 1 million people watch the entirety of Paddleton. Streaming movies all have the same ugly, bland visual style, because they have to be lit and shot to be just as clear and visible on a smartphone screen as they are on a massive 4K TV or a cinema screen.
That indescribable feeling we get when the lights begin to dim.
So, why are modern movies so mid? Because they're basically designed that way. They'll make Jon Favreau re-edit his TV show into a feature film. They'll give J.J. Abrams a little over a year to make Rise of Skywalker. They'll give Gareth Edwards a little less than a year to make Jurassic World Rebirth. And it's just not long enough to create something special. It's only long enough to create something that technically constitutes a movie that can be put into theaters. They'll start shooting Captain America 4 with a script that doesn't work, and then desperately try and make it work as the shoot runs over into reshoots and the film is still no closer to making any kind of sense. It's much more business than creativity. It's much more commerce than art. The studios and streamers don't really give a fuck if their movies change your life or not. They just want your eyes on their product, and they only aim high enough for you to not hate it enough to turn it off. They don't want you to love their movies. They want you to take out your wallets and tolerate them.
Everything's not awesome. Things can be awesome all of the time. It's an unrealistic expectation.
Thanks for watching, guys. I hope you liked the video. Remember to like and subscribe and click on the little bell. And also seize the day and call your mom and be kind to yourself.